Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I am here to do a review of the new Nickel Boys film and looking at it in comparison with the original book by Colson Whitehead. Let's talk about it. I was lucky enough to be invited by YouTube to an early screening of this upcoming film, and then afterwards there was a Q&A with the cinematographer, which was fascinating. Watch to the end for a clip of the cinematographer of the film discussing it, but as a book content creator, I was particularly interested in this because Nickel Boys is a book that I reviewed ahead of it coming out in 2019. I thought the book was phenomenal at the time, and I was really curious to see how they were going to translate this story to the big screen. TLDR, I think they did an incredible job, and I think the movie is a masterpiece. The way that they did the filming, we're gonna get into it, is unlike anything I've ever seen before, and I was really impressed. So the book is drawing on real-world history to create a fictional story set in the Jim Crow era South, following two Black kids at a boys' reform school and looking at how they got there, what their experiences were like, the abuses that took place, and still trying to cope with that years later. What's interesting is that this book is based on a real school that was in operation all the way up until 2011. So in very recent history, there are young men who were at that school not so many years ago. And it was a few years later that they began excavating the grounds and uncovering all of these secret burial sites of boys that had been killed or had died through some of the abuses that took place. So it is a rough read, but it is incredibly written. It's not very long. I do recommend the book. I didn't know what to expect from a film that was taking on something with such difficult graphic material, and I think that the way that they did it was really impressive. The entire film is shot in first-person perspective. Think like you're playing an RPG video game where like you can see your hands, but you don't see the character that you're playing and you see the world around you. That's the way that this film is shot. What it accomplishes is so incredible because it manages to put you behind the eyes and in the head of the characters who are experiencing the world the way that they are. And for me, the experience felt like it was sort of stripping away a lot of the walls that are typically in between the viewer and the film. There was an intimacy and an emotional immediacy to what it was like to watch through the eyes of this character, where you are not just viewing something as an outsider, but you feel intimately involved in what's happening. One choice that I think is really interesting and I think more impactful in this film is there is no graphic violence on screen. You don't see graphic violence. It chooses to look away from it, but sometimes you hear it in the background. And so as a viewer, you're left to imagine what the horror of those violent moments is, and because of the way that the film is made, it feels so close and so immediate. And I found it harrowing to watch certain moments in the film, but it's also such a beautiful film. It feels artistic. The lens through which these boys see the world feels that way. So, you know, you're looking at the beauty of a spider web or light coming through a curtain, or, you know, a grandmother's hands as she's preparing breakfast. It's like these little everyday moments and glimpses of the world. I've never experienced anything like it. It was a profound experience for me, and something where I feel you could watch this film over again. And this is something the cinematographer said in the Q&A, which I can absolutely see why this would be the case, that this is the kind of movie that every time you see it, you're gonna notice something different. And it was really interesting to hear him talk about the way that they accomplished this in the movie. And there were several things that he discussed in terms of the actual art of the film, of how they made this happen. Again, I do have a clip of a little bit of what he said at the end of this that I will post, but I'll recap some of the things that he said. One piece of it is they tried to think of it as if the camera is a character, right? It is part of that person, part of that character. And so thinking about how do we see the world as people in a way that is really different from how the camera views action in cinema. We might look away in a difficult moment. We might not see something happening over here and then notice it while the action is already happening. And so they intentionally filmed the movie in a way that tries to mimic the human experience of seeing the world, which is such a wild thing. And then interspersed in certain parts of the movie, they used actual archival images from the real school that this whole thing was based on. So photos of boys who were actually students at this school, archival images of items that were excavated, like buttons and belt buckles and various things. And it, I think, only adds to the sense of immediacy and reality of what this film is doing. There's a lot of metaphor in the images that are used. They pull in real footage of things like Martin Luther King Jr. speaking or Sidney Poitier in classic films, and it's just amazing. It is gorgeously done, incredibly shot. I've never seen anything like it. I know I don't normally specifically talk about film, I talk about books, but as somebody who had read the original book, I was thinking, this is such a powerful book. How are you going to translate that onto screen in a way that is equally moving and powerful without coming across as trauma porn, which I think is sometimes a direction that films like this can go. And I was floored by how well it accomplished it. I didn't know what to expect from the first person POV filming process, but in my opinion, for a story like this, it works really well because you have such a strong sense of empathy with the characters, and you can't help but imagine what it would be like to be in their position. And there's so many little tiny things, bits of dialogue you hear in the background, or things that they see out the bus window. I don't know, there's just, I'm just left thinking about this film so much in a way that movies don't typically have an impact like that for me, and I really hope other people go to see it because I found it to be really impressive. Thank you so much to YouTube for inviting me to see it. I've been invited to film screenings in the past that have been really fun, and typically I'll make a YouTube short documenting the experience and what it was like, but I don't go into a lot of depth on what happened and what I saw. But with this movie, I came out of it thinking, I have to make a standalone video discussing it. So personally, I think the Nickel Boys book is incredible. I think the film is an absolute masterpiece, and I was amazed at how well they did. Here is a clip of the cinematographer discussing the making of Nickel Boys.
A lot of what I think my work has always been centered around is how do you imbue an image with emotion? How do you create an image that you can smell, an image that you can feel the temperature in? How do you make an image more sensorial and more human and more like reaching for something deeper? And how do I, as a cinematographer, kind of create a certain level of vulnerability in myself when I create images so that the images themselves can have a certain vulnerability that hopefully just feels human? Yeah. I think for both Rommel and I, it really came down to feeling like if they were alive today, then I think that they probably would be filmmakers or visual artists. Like there's a way in which they see their world aesthetically. And I think that that's also kind of a weird thing too, where sometimes you think in systems of like deep brutality and inhumanity, everything is inhuman, everything is brutal, but like actually the counterintuitively and the beauty of humans is that we still find beauty even amongst ugly things. And I think that that was a large part of it for this movie, was that it's, yes, it's someone navigating the Jim Crow South, but it's also someone who loves their grandmother and who remembers their grandmother cooking on a Sunday and like listening to music, who remembers light passing through a set of curtains and like the way that it just danced on the wall, that was beautiful even amidst a system of oppression like the Jim Crow South. So yeah, I think towards that it was really, again, trying to do these ways of conceptually thinking for Rommel and I to, like, the thing we always would say is that we wanted to create an image that, you know, early on in prep we were saying, oh, it's POV, but then we kind of dropped that word and we started saying that what we were after was creating an image that felt sentient, an image that had its own consciousness, an image that felt like trying to rethink what the camera is, not as a tool, but as an organ. What would that look like if the camera was an organ in the body? And something Rommel would often say in prep almost rhetorically would ask the question of what would the world look like if every photograph taken of everyone else was taken by a person thinking as if they were taking a photo of their brother, their sister, their mother, their friend. Like, we all know the difference. We know the difference between a photo that we take of our mothers and a photo of our mothers taken by anyone else in the world. There's an intimacy there that when you're trying to capture someone, that whatever your relationship is, it is larger than life, and there's a way in which you photograph differently when you're photographing your mother. And I think that that's what it really came down to. And the interesting thing about this process, as you know, a cinematographer and as a camera operator, whether it was me or our camera operator Sam Ellison, you know, whenever you see the camera hug the actor or hug Anjanu, that's me, she's physically hugging. That changes the way you make an image. When you literally just have a haptic connection with someone, when you are literally embracing them or being embraced by them, you know, that same type of thing clicks on. So, you know, this project was interesting because it wasn't me, Jomo Fray, trying to shoot the, you know, venerable Anjanu Ellis Taylor. It had to be me, Jomo, in the body and the mind of Elwood, hugging my grandmother, you know? And I think that again, it changes the way you make an image when you're thinking about the person on the other side as a person who you're connected to on an existential love level, not just as a person or a person in the scene. So yeah, there was a way in which the camera, we had to kind of embrace being actors for the movie in a totally different way. And like, you know, the actors became our scene partners. Like if they went left, we had to jump left, even if that wasn't the plan. So
I'm so grateful I had this experience and got the chance to watch this movie and then hear the cinematographer talk about the making of the movie afterwards. That was like the most incredible, incredible experience. And I hope I was able to share a little bit of that with you. And I hope some of y'all will go and see Nickel Boys because it's phenomenal. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts. And if you've seen the movie, let me know what you thought of it. Is this something that made you more interested in going to see it, more interested in maybe picking up the book? I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.